In this video, we're going to be talking about killing Frieda Last on the Mythic Council encounter, especially during progression. Okay, this was our first kill of the fight, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happens on the encounter. We're going to do like a full, very detailed strategy. I'll go through every second of the encounter because I've had to learn it that way for a variety of reasons. We're also going to tell you a lot about why we did it and the reactions to why we did it and some of the weird things that we had to go through while doing this fight. So there's going to be timestamps. Please check it out. If all you're here is to just see a run through the fight, this may not be the video for you, but there will be that in as well. But yeah, I'm going to try to do a full breakdown, a full reaction to this 10-minute encounter effectively. The logs will be down below as well. But before we begin, I want to talk to you a little bit about why and the kind of stuff that we've had to deal with along the way in terms of the why. So when we started this encounter, it was a long time ago. Our first night of progression, we actually weren't even able to make progress because there was some bug with DBM. It was right when the 9.1 patch dropped and there was something wrong with DBM. So we couldn't isolate what the actual issue was. So we basically made no progress. That frustrated us, obviously. Like we literally didn't make any progress because we constantly were crashing or something like that. So that was very frustrating. That might have been one night. Then the next night we come in, and that's kind of sitting there lingering on us a bit. But we start to make progress. We get, obviously through the first phase, which we'd be calling killing the first boss. Relatively, like somewhat, we're getting there. And we're getting into the second phase, meaning killing the second boss. So the traditional order, this is when the mechanics start to begin that define the encounter. In the strategy we're using here, I wouldn't really say that's the case. But in the original strategy where you do not kill Frieda last, you have a very role defining situation occur with these ads that constantly spawn. These ads do a lot of damage. They seem to be, they're there constantly the whole fight, and you need to deal with them well. So typically, when you have progression on this fight, there's a couple things that you want coming out of your group to make sure that you can deal with them well. The easiest thing is to just have balanced druids. Starfall hits them all extremely easily without much upkeep from the druid in general, and kind of range characters that have good cleave, in general, like dots and stuff like that, can be very good. So I'm not precisely sure what the best options would be, but I know Balanced Druid would be tier one, number one. I presume something like Marksman Hunter would be extremely good. I definitely know DK in general, especially Unholy DK, is extremely good, and not necessarily just for damage. And I also would believe something like Fire Mage would probably be very good for that too. We have none of those, literally zero at the time, especially. We had two hunters, both of them were BM, and yeah, okay. So anyway, we have no DK at all besides me. We have zero balanced druids, like none, and we have only mages are frost or arcane. So from what I could tell, we have the worst possible comp for this. So we're doing progression, making very little progress at all. To the point where we're not making, like we're getting that phase and it's just no progress for an entire night. So we did that. I looked into ways to do the fight without DKs. That's what I started looking at, non-DK strategies. But they always have druids. They always have classes that are able to kill them quickly. It's like there's two things. You either group them up extremely well, or you have to have very good spread damage. And there's not a lot of good classes for spread damage right now, like outside of those. But yeah, if you guys have some suggestions on that, let me know. I am unaware of what a good comp would look like besides having a bunch of druids and DKs and stuff. So at the time, I was the only Death Knight, and this was ultimately the nail in the coffin for the strategy. I love the guys I play with. I love the guilds. This is why I raid, because the people. But unfortunately, they put extremely little effort into preparing for encounters. And I'll take some blame because I do a lot of hand holding, I suppose, at times. But yeah, most people in this guild are not going to put any effort into strategy building coming into the fight. And that's fine. We've raided this way for a long time. I do 90% of the legwork on the strategies and 99% of the raid callouts. And usually, if I miss a call or I do something inaccurately, it's going to cause people to die. And fortunately, you would have seen it if you watched this progression gambit. There was times where I miss a call, especially with the a bunch of different mechanics. If I miss a call or say something wrong at the wrong time, That's pretty much the wipe right there. So, yeah, for better or for worse, that's how the guild is. So we come into that, and as the tank on this fight, so I don't know, maybe we were doing something wrong out of the gate, but this is insane. I could not believe how difficult it was to survive this encounter as a tank. Now, this is well like before 9.1, first of all, and before the blood DK, the 10% damage buff. So tanking has gotten probably a lot easier in general since we started this fight. But at the time, I was getting slaughtered. I felt like I needed to go like full defensive kit just to be able to survive. There was, again, no Crimson Rune weapon buff and all that, so that wasn't there. Actually, I guess it would have just been prominent, but regardless, I felt like I was completely unable to survive this fight easily without significant consolation on my part towards defense. So that was one thing. We get into that phase. Now, not only do I have to do that, but I also have to do the utility role. Okay, so I'm the only Death Knight in the entire raid. So I have to make sure I'm gripping the ads in on cooldown. And to the point, actually, now I remember the situation. The legendary, I had to wear a legendary that I didn't even have crafted before in order to be able to grip more. So I had to put these boots on that make me have no cooldown on death grip after one use within 3 seconds. So I can grip 2 targets every time I grip, basically. And I think there's like 4 or 5 ads that spawn. I legitimately don't remember, but yeah, realistically, I wasn't able to get every one anyway, and it was a lot of work. Like to the point where on top of tanking and tabbing through the targets and gripping them, I was like, oh my god, I legitimately don't know if I can do this. Like I'm not the best player in the world, but I do think I'm competent enough to do most raid fights. But this was like, wow, I don't know if I legitimately don't know if I can do this. The survival element, and so then I was wearing like a really suboptimal legendary, and I didn't have it maxed out. Like it wasn't. I spent all my soul or whatever ash on other legendaries, especially Crimson Rune weapon recently, so I didn't have enough to even get this like a rank 1 legendary. Very stressful. Now think about all that on top of also being the only person who does any type of communication on the encounter effectively. Again, I don't want to sell the group short, but like I think it's fair to say that realistically, if I don't lead the raid, it's not ever going to progress. So it was incredibly difficult. Like I still to this day don't think I could have killed the boss doing those all three of those things. The only solution I would have found would be not tank, not raid lead, or not grip. One of those two, like two of the three could occur, but not all three. There's no way I could be making calls, running around gripping all those ads, and not only gripping them but gripping them accurately, because you only have a small window where you can grip twice. So in order to do that, I had to be accurate as well, and I that was one of the big issues. I kept clicking on players, I kept clicking on the same ad, accidentally gripped the same ad at times. It was like just a complete mess. And on top of that, they're not dying. Like if you go back and look at those pulls when we were in that phase, we'd have like 2 sets of ads up at once because we have no damage. If they're not getting dragged to the boss, they are not dying. So when we're like yelling and trying to get people to kill them, the boss is not dying. It's like one way or the other. It's like we either can't kill these ads or we can't kill the boss. Our damage, our splits were terrible. And again, I know this was early in progression, but it was like, my God, I was like, we are not going to make any of these splits. We're 4 healing. So the healers are like screaming about like, we can't heal through this. This is ridiculous. I can't believe it. So it's like, okay, yeah, stress all around. So in the chat, a guy who actually gave us an amazing, I mean, maybe the most like progression defining tip I've ever gotten on a raid from somebody like outside the guild. This guy gave us a tip on Enerva. Okay. Same guy. He come in the stream while we're doing this and he's just seeing us getting slaughtered. And he's like, hey, we also have no druids and maybe, more as well. We did it this way and we killed it. It was so much smoother progression. I'm like, okay, because that was my complaint right there. I'm like, this fight sucks. It's one of the worst fights I've ever done, and its progression was just like completely at a halt. There was nothing smooth about it. I didn't feel like we would be doing that phase for weeks before we would be able to get by it. Okay, so he offered something to me that seemed very enticing, more straightforward progression route. So we tried it, and that is ultimately how we killed the boss. Now, we ultimately picked up another Death Knight. a friend of the channel as well, and became a very good player in our guild. He offered to go Necrolord or whatever to take the grippy hands. This is actually like the main reason you bring DKs. It's not even just regular grip, but it's actually the grippy hands thing because it pulls them all in very rapidly. So, could do that, I guess, with Gore Fiends as well. Option, for me to go Necrolord, just not really on the table. I love Knife A. I'm not going to, go Necrolord just for this one encounter. That's certainly not going to happen. So yeah, it was a bit of a impasse there. But, as the fight progressed, we did get a slightly better comp for it. We got more marksmanship on it. We get people coordinating their damage better. It could have gone better. Let's put it that way. We could have not given up on that. But when we switched, I'm like, wow, we're getting past where we were before easily. Like it was so much easier to get to like a progression point on the encounter every pull. And I was like, that's really good. Like I love that. Okay. So the difference that I didn't account for when we first started this, and I think if I knew this, I would have not approached it this way, was that in the original, like the standard kill, like the chalk kill that everybody does, the third phase is easy and the second phase is hard. Okay. Well, and then they nerfed the portion of the third phase that's supposed to be very difficult. So in our kill with Frieda Last, it's the opposite. The second phase is not hard, like it's barely any different than the first phase, and the third phase is just double the difficulty of phase 1 and 2. So in general, the overall fight is way easier to progress on, but way harder to get the kill on. Okay. So do I think that it was the right decision? Without having somebody else to do the job that I described, it was the only decision. There was no other decision. So we went through this, and I, just started streaming the raids this season, mostly for a few reasons. One of the reasons is this absolute nonsense that occurred. Like I cannot express to you how frustrating it was to even look over at chat. It was unbelievably frustrating to the point where I was very close to just banning like 50% of the people chatting. The amount of backseat gaming that I had to read was embarrassing, honestly. And I understand that it looks like we're struggling because of the strategy, but we really weren't. Like for like 20% of the actual wipes, we struggled because of the strategy. Every other wipe was just something else that would have been wiping us regardless of what order we were killing the boss in. And probably at least like 70% of our wipes were in phase 1 and 2. Like not even the hard part. We almost didn't get to phase 3 until we were ready to kill the fight. So it's not like those people I've lost so much respect for, because first of all, I know they didn't try this. Like they didn't try it. Okay. They're just like people who can't think for themselves, basically, who are like, oh, look how much trouble you're having. You're an idiot, basically. It's like, yeah, we're having trouble because the group sucks. Okay. So mind your own business or something like that. And the other side of it is it's like they're just looking for reasons to say we're wiping. But if you actually are in the raid, like nobody feels this way. Nobody's like, oh my God, such a bad idea. Like it was so frustrating. I didn't even know what to do anymore. Okay. So I'm telling you all this because it's not just a strategy, it's a commitment. If you want to do it this way, you have to be aware of what you're doing. Okay. So for me, there was no option. We didn't have a choice. I'm the only one who can raid lead the fight. I guess I could have tried to DPS, but I don't think it would have really gone any better because I wouldn't know what I was doing. I've never DPS'd a raid fight before. Like I've only ever tanked and healed. And it was so difficult to survive. So yeah, by now, if we started today, yeah, it would have been a lot easier to do this encounter. I would have had Soul Ash to have that rank 4 legendary. I would be wearing a freaking 190 piece in progression. Um, we would have a second DK, so the stress on that would be less. But he would have to also wear the legendary for it to be comfortable, or he'd have to switch his entire covenant, and I'd be asking a player to do that just for that. Which, as a Frost DK, not an Unholy DK, I don't think that's a very good choice for him. Or somebody else would have to do the raid leading, or we would just be sitting here wiping to a lack of raid leading, which again, it happens all the freaking time in our guild, all the time. Literally every time I flubbed up a call, just a mistake and it's a wipe. Okay. So that needs to be said. And again, to all the people who were like, I mean, we're 150 pulls in, we have a 5% wipe, and people are still trying to say, you're an idiot, switch the strategy. Like in this VOD that I record, the video, you're going to read the comments on the screen. It's like, okay, so just be aware of that. If you're in a guild, or, especially if you're not the raid leader, or you don't know how people are going to react to this, if you're not in a guild that is like mentally they're not cohesive, you're going to deal with this. This is a very common mentality in this game from people who are simply not like, they're not very strong mentally. They see somebody else do something and they immediately assume it's the only way to do something. And then they just look for reasons to support their own biases everywhere. You're going to get this if you're in a group like that. And I don't feel like anybody. We talked about it after we killed the fight, and like almost like there was no resistance whatsoever. Everybody in the guild was like, "Yeah, no, that was the right way to kill the fight for us for sure." Like nobody had any second doubts. So I just wanted to bring that up. So that was stage one of our like group like progression. The stage two is even more important. Okay, so when we were doing the original strategy, I was watching all these videos. Everybody's like, you got to four heal. Okay, four heal because you need to make the damage splits, and if you don't, you might not. Okay, so that's what everybody's saying. It's better to be comfortable with these damage splits, and you'll skip dangerous mechanics. So I don't actually know what any of those overlaps or mechanics ever look like because we never did that strategy far enough to know, and we never really saw any of them even when we didn't. Okay. So I don't actually know what that strategy looks like. But all I know is we were not able to kill the ads, even though we had four healers. We were not able to meet like the mechanical checks with four healers, and we were not able to heal. So it was like we can't do that strategy. So then we switched to this, which I thought would also be way easier to heal. Again, that was a fatal error. It certainly was not at the hard part. So another thing we did relatively clumsily, two other things, was we basically never handled Dark Recital well. Like we never mastered it. And I got sick of trying to wait for people to master it. So instead I said, let people just do whatever they have to survive. Okay. Not a good approach. And of course, a very lazy, ham-fisted approach to this mechanic. But it's the way it works for our guild because otherwise we're going to be 19 people are going to be sitting there for praying that that one person doesn't get the mechanic. And that still happened, but it was diminished because of the way we approached it. Another thing we never handled well was the jumps. Okay. The weak core, everybody should have it. Still, you see in this progression, people are just completely unaware. Like the best example I can give about everything I talked about was we would stack up, we'd jump, and one person would just compete completely unaware that they have the mechanic. So like we're calling out to jump, not just individual people because of the comp we have. We have shamans and all these things. So it's like we can just jump. No reason to wait. Just do it. Use CDs. We're good. The mechanic's over. And there'd be one person completely unaware they have the mechanic. And that would happen often in phase 1 and 2. But in phase 3, we actually had multiple wipes to it the night of the kill. Okay. So up until the night we killed the boss, we had people die to not jumping 3 times. Okay. So that's what we're working with. If any of these things sound like your guild, then you're starting to see the bigger picture here. So anyway, the fatal flaw that I didn't realize here was when you do this strategy, DPS is like no longer a factor. I don't know why. I don't actually understand it. But from what I could see when I'm watching other people kill the boss, it's like there's no stress at all. DPS is so easy. It's because there's only ever one target, right? When you're killing all these ads constantly, the DPS has been taken off the main target, but that doesn't occur. There's no mechanic that makes you DPS. So yes, mechanically, the fight is harder when you kill Frieda last, but DPS wise, it's way easier from what I could tell. But again, it didn't actually do the other strategy to phase 3, so I don't know. But anyway, we had no problems with DPS. So the ultimate, the reason we kill this fight is because we 5 heal. Okay, so here we go. Summary: if you have a very poor comp, if you do not have balanced druids, you don't have people who can grip, you don't have the cohesion you need as a unit to be able to do the mechanics that occur when you do the normal strategy, you might have to consider doing it this way. It, in my opinion, is not actually harder up until the very end of the fight. And the best way to circumvent that difficulty is to 5 heal. That is the best way to do it, and preferably not with 2 classes total. We had 2 priests and 3 shaman effectively. So, yeah, that is not ideal. Okay. Actually, no, 3 priests and 2 shaman, of course, is what we ended up with. But anyway, yeah, not ideal. That's not a very good comp. Ideally, a Mistweaver, a Holy Pally, or even probably a Resto Druid would have been so much better than one of the priests, or maybe even one of the shaman. I don't really know. It depends on what we're doing at times. But and the main reason that would be is because ultimately we see with the Divine Hymn usage, it's just that kind of CD is more beneficial than a Spirit Link. For 90% of the encounters, Spirit Link can carry you, but at the end of the fight, when the chips are down, it's useless. Everybody's all spread out, so you're never going to get any value out of it. So then you're relying on Healing Tide, which we know one of the worst healing CDs. So something like Devo, even more warriors. Even if we had like 5 warriors, you know what I mean? That would have been huge because then we could have rally for every overlap. All that stuff would have helped so much. So we had a lot of trouble getting CDs used. So instead, 5 healing now makes the rest of the fight a complete joke. At least it should. The hardest parts of the encounter, healing wise, are just making sure you have what you need for the times when basically there's like a combination of mechanics. You're going to see it, and we're going to go through it. A combination of mechanics that happen that could stress out individuals. So the healers are not just blindly AoE healing, and I think we had trouble with that at times. I don't know exactly what or why caused so many problems for people, but people would get these mechanics, 3 people taking damage, and one of them would just die. So your healers need to have raid frames set up. They need to know what mechanic is on what player, and they need to know when they need to heal and when they don't need to. And the best thing about the strategy is the tanks take no damage. Like, it is so freaking easy to tank. It is unbelievable. There's no stress whatsoever. Healers can use all their defensive CDs on actual damage dealers. Another really big thing, if you have tanks that could go full offensive without having to be concerned, and you have healers who can kind of supplement the mistakes that a DPS could make, this is a really good option. And I feel like this is ultimately what gets us the kill, because we finally are in sync. Our DPS are struggling, but our healers are pushing through it. We're making the right decisions from CD usage and externals, and it keeps people alive to the end of the encounter. So that's it. So let's take a look at the actual fight now, and I'm going to go through every element in this encounter so you understand exactly what's going on here. Okay. Before we start, I will say the biggest thing that you need to be aware of on this progression, even though phase 1 and 2 are way, in my opinion, way easier than any other alternative strategy, you cannot have any deaths, because the end of the fight is so hectic that you're going to need battle reses to get through it. And you could actually have all 3 battle reses up for that and still not do it. Okay. So we had that happen a lot, where we just simply are wasting battle reses, and it's like there's just no way to kill this boss like this. To the point where up until the actual kill, I was like, we may not kill this boss. We might actually have to go to a different strategy, as people just weren't getting it and we weren't having the no deaths early thing. So let's get to it. So the boss starts. I am the tank, Blood DK, tanking Nicholas. He is the target first. Okay, so you cannot kill Nicholas anything but first if you're doing this. I don't actually know why. I knew why at some point, but it's even more absurd if you don't kill him first. We actually, another thing about the strategy, what you'll see is it changes the way Nicholas's mechanic, or I guess the other dude's, yeah, Stavros' mechanic works. Okay, so you'll see that in the video. But anyway, this is another thing that you might be concerned about. Like, Frieda starts right in the dead center of the room, so it's easier to get her positioned. But so that doesn't matter. Just pull Nicholas over. People are like pre-dropping CDs and stuff. Just make sure that you have threat and you don't have any concern if you're tanking this. Otherwise, just a straight burn. Okay. There's three. I guess technically I would say there's 4 DPS checks if you're doing this strategy. Okay, and this is the first one. I'll explain to you why. So here we go. So fight begins. First mechanic is jumps. Okay. So what we're doing is I'm using my AMZ here. We have 2 AMZs. We have a very good bevy of CDs now. So this is actually really easy for us now with the 5 healers. So I'm just throwing AMZ down. And again, almost every time we just jump immediately. Okay. So I'm calling it out jumps. First jumps, throw a little late on the pull here, but regardless, AMZ and 1 Spirit Link. And we're just clearing this out. As you see, we take no danger whatsoever. It's like everybody's at 100% health after it. If you don't think that's a good idea, don't do that. Okay. Another criticism of the strategy was that too. When we were four healing, especially, it just you really have to hit your CDs well. Is it worth it? I don't know. Now, you probably aren't able to tell very well, but the attendant has come from the right side. Okay, so I just want to say that I had a very big blind side when I was doing this fight for whatever reason. I always have my back to that side, and if an attendant ever spawns, it caused a lot of problems for me to be able to see it. It's not really a big deal. But ideally, what I was trying to do with the boss was I was trying to move it so the attendant, instead of here, he's right in the dead center of all the CDs. Okay. And it sounds dumb, but you'd be surprised at one, how much auto attacks, and two, how much AoEs on the ground do passively. We learned this a long time ago in Firelands, and it's been something that's stuck with me forever. If there's ever a priority target and you have everybody stacked, that priority target has to be stacked too. Because if it's not, that's just free damage lost. And at worst, it's damage lost on the next target. So what I mean by that is people have to run out to attack that attendant, then they're slow getting back to Nicholas. Slow getting back to the kill target means DPS lost doubly. And of course, the boss is immune. So ideally, you could actually make it so this boss never gets immune. And I think if you watch very good guilds kill this boss with very good comps, this ad doesn't reach the boss. Like ideally, your comp would allow for that, especially if you have really good range. This ad would just die before it reaches the boss, and the boss never goes immune. This is very common to see. We did not do this ever. But so the first time it happens, a very bad job. But it doesn't actually matter because this first DPS race, even though we're 5 healing, we are crushing. Okay. And I don't know why. Obviously, Vantage runes. I don't know what it'll be like in the future, but we are crushing it. Okay. And when we switched from 4 healing to 5 healing, a lot of people were like, we're not going to make these splits anymore. We're going to have to relearn the fight. I'm like, no. I watched a lot of guilds and looked at a lot of logs from guilds. They're making it. It's not hard. And we actually, it like was easier actually somehow. So anyway, something to keep in mind. Okay. All CDs on the pole minus Bloodlust. And of course, you can pre-pop. The thing is, we actually didn't like need it. We were waiting. It might even be this poll. There's many times we were waiting like upwards of 5 or 6 seconds to make sure certain mechanics happen, because this is the problem with this fight. This is why everybody hates this fight. If you do not have the mechanics happen at the right time, they completely complicate the encounter. Okay. So anyway, yeah, this first DPS portion, just make sure everybody's actually on Nicholas and not cleaving. Historically, we've had 1 or 2 players who would think this is like an AoE fight, and that does not help. Okay. The only damage that matters is Nicholas. And if you don't maximize your offense on a single target, you're going to have a lot of trouble. So anyway, here is Dark Recital. So it's the ad comes out. So it's jump first, then ad, then Dark Recital. Okay, very easy. Nothing, even if you were doing the other strategy, this would exactly be the same way. So everybody's stacked up. Ideally, they're moving around the boss. I'm not going to talk about this. Hopefully, everybody knows how to do this mechanic. But as you see, this is not what it's supposed to look like. And this is happening because we have some confident players and some maybe, well, you know, these two are together at least, but like, yeah, it's not ideal. Okay. What I said was just survive. I don't care. You're not actually going to die from not being with your partner. You're going to die to the red circles. And we had a lot of deaths to the red circles. So yet another, shortcut on this fight. I'm just like, just survive. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're with your partner or not. We have 5 healers. You'll survive. And that wasn't true on some polls, as some people pointed out. But for 99% of the attempts with this ability, nobody was ever going to die to not being with their partner. They just die to red circles instead. Okay. So as you see, this is definitely not how you want this handled. This is because these people have run at a terrible angle, and this person specifically has run way too fast and way too close to the boss. So we've started here and we've gone so far away that we're now going this direction. And this requires all these people who are back here to be moving and double DPS loss there. So not ideal, not how you want to handle this, but it doesn't stop us from killing the fight. So this should be a good look for you guys to realize that it can be handled very poorly as long as everybody's alive. Okay. So that's it. Phase 1 is now, or well, the first half of phase 1 is effectively over. Those 3 mechanics are all you need. It's the same no matter what. There's going to be another ad spawn though. This is the DPS race, okay? If this ad comes out and immunes the boss, you're done. Like it's over, okay? You will not make the chat, like the rest of the fight will be screwed up, okay? You don't want to learn the fight this way. At least I don't feel like you do. Maybe somebody has success with it. I don't know. But No way are we ever going to let that happen. So even if it happens and the ad comes out, you can still kite the boss. Like we can move the boss 150 yards away from that ad if we have to. Certainly don't want to be doing that. And it's not really going to be to our benefit because then it might just delay, it might not actually help us. We might just have other mechanics spawning because now it's taking the boss forever to die because he's running away from everybody. But it can be done. As long as that ad doesn't immune the boss, you need to make that check, okay? But the thing I was talking about, if you're too fast, the ad will not spawn. And then it will they're calling it juicing. It's gonna set the mechanics at a different interval. Okay, so you want to add to spawn. So let's actually go through that one more time. I want to show you exactly what happens. I'm looking here. My target was as long as Nicholas, the target we're fighting, is at 60 or higher when the ability has 10 seconds left. Okay, so we'll show exactly 10 seconds left here. Okay, as long as he is 60 or higher, we're good. If he's ever 60 or lower, like 60 on the dot or 59, we have to stop all damage. Okay, and the rate at which we stop it is not precise, but you just need to stop, okay, for some period of time. So anyway, we're way above that. It's a little slow. This pulse fine. Doesn't matter at all. It's actually still ends up being fast, and I don't know why people have like these big burst like segments, I guess, but we go from being slow to fast, and it almost doesn't like it almost screws us over. But so 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. The cast is not enough. So the boss needs to not be dead right now. And like I said, plenty of pulls where he was. If this cast does not at least start and he's transitioning, you're in trouble. But as long as it starts, you're good. Okay? As long as it starts, the ad will spawn, even if the boss goes immune and pushes. So that is ideal. I would say exactly what we want. The ad is going to spawn out here, and Jix was marking it, throwing a moon down. So he's just going to put a moon on this tile. And that's important because you want everybody to kill that ad as fast as possible. But of course, he's not there right now. So here, if you need help with this, we got bigger problems. I can't help you with it. But so the next thing that happens is killing that ad. Okay, so this is extremely important for making the DPS checks on this fight. Is the ads dying? Okay, if they don't die fast, which we did, like at times we did really well, but I don't think we ever did great, and we usually did poor. Okay, so we are being very cautious talking about this ad a lot. So as you see, we're ready. Multiple people are here, including Melee, killing this ad as fast as humanly possible. And it's going to be a theme throughout the encounter. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Handle it however you see fit. If you have a lot of really good range that are, especially if you have like 500s or something like that, then you're probably in really good shape with this ad. So it's not a problem. But that ad needs to die as fast as possible. So anyway, now the next portion of the fight starts. So it's basically like every phase kind of ramps up what the mechanics are and what they need to be, how they need to be handled. But again, it doesn't really start getting difficult until the very end. So now the mechanic is after killing that ad, we have the first set of jumps. Now here we also have Drain Essence going out, and we also have the Dark Recital coming right after it. So we don't want to take any risks here. Instead of just jumping, which maybe some groups would do, or really doing any effort on this mechanic, we're just going to pause it and we're going to look to the other side of the mechanical wave for it to be happening. Okay. And there's not a lot of room there. You have to be very careful. So instead, I'm having the top person on this weak core. I'm going to jump. It's me. I'm just going to jump and nobody else. The other 4 people will not jump on purpose, at least. And 4 people instead of 5 means it's so much easier to heal. And now we're just waiting anyway, right? So here we go. So Dark Recital is cast. Everybody should be stacked. Yeah, typically in a really tight clump, we did decent at this. But Mechanic comes out. And as you see, people start moving. Again, you see like people like, look at this. So the 2 yellow, whoever is yellow, I mean, they're like so freaking far away. It's unbelievable. But it doesn't matter because as long as they're not standing in red circles, they will live. And as long as you're not jumping and taking extra damage from other mechanics, there's no danger here, especially this early in the fight with 5 healers. So this is, again, affordability. This is like the crutch. You have 5 healers. Everything else gets easier. You can make a few more mistakes. So the target we're looking for is not just Dark Recital to be over, but it's actually whatever this, I drain, whatever, drain essence. I never remember the name of that mechanic. As soon as I see this is over, so it's not on anybody anymore, now we start jumping, okay? Because the next one comes out very shortly after, and you want it to be over when that occurs, okay? So we have the mechanic beginning. We want to clear all of these stacks at once. So we're just using Divine Hymn there. Vicaria, I think, doesn't actually use it. We don't even need it. That's how easy it's become. So at one point we had a Divine Hymn there, but we don't even need it anymore. So anyway, that's pretty much that. Okay, you survived those two things. Next thing is an ad. Ad's going to come out, same thing. Nicholas is always easy to move. Move the boss, make sure the ad is in the CD so it dies as expeditiously as possible. And then damage is high on Nicholas. You never have to worry about that. Like, people are moving off Nicholas anyway, so you can move the boss and everything's going to die faster. By the time this thing dies, Nicholas is back in position. So it's easy mode. Okay. And so we're here, stacked back up, and it's immediately add, then dark recital again. And this is something to say to your raid if you're, raid leading. Say like, don't get lost on the ad, because a lot of people in earlier polls would be like completely like they'd be over there attacking the ad, and then they'd be like, oh no, dark recital. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah. So you need to be stacked still. You need to be cohesively, ready to move, basically, not panicking. So dark recital comes. Here we go. Amazing weak cores. Hopefully you guys know where these are. I don't have them handy, but if you need me to get them, I can. I just don't know if I'll remember. Anyway, Dark Recital is the same mechanic. Now at this point, we're going to make a big move. And this was actually one of the tips that the guy I told you about before gave me. And this was like, I was like, this is when I was sure this guy knew what he was talking about. Because when he said this, I'm like, oh my God, this is like 200 IQ stuff. So we're going to move the boss. This is Nicholas we're moving, okay? The whole boss cadre is moving, but as Dark Recital is ending, we're moving. Boss is usually around 5% here, so keep that in mind. So we're moving to the middle of the room. We have a blue marker here, dead center of the room, okay? Now this is for a very, very, very specific reason. You don't have to do this. It's a very specific reason. Because for some reason, the ads will spawn with relationship to Nicholas for the rest of the fight, okay? So then every ad will spawn with, like, they're going to be on the all the way opposite side of the room, okay? So that means that you will never have, like, it, not never, but it's always like way more likely to have an ad traveling like 400 yards than it is 30 yards, okay? Whereas in the other situation, the ads can spawn anywhere, and maybe it doesn't matter to you, but what we were having was so much uptime for that ad that if people actually switched to it properly, it would die so far away. You know what I mean? It would be so easy to deal with. Boss never goes immune. So that's a really good tip, and I don't know how important it was for us, but it was really good when I realized how well like that. Yeah, I realized how strong that mechanical overlap could be. So anyway, we now have the jumping stacks, but drain essence is going out. Okay, so here's another thing to notice: when the boss dies, the mechanics just stop. Okay, so drain essence is going out. So what we're doing is we're stacking up. We're here. I'm going to drop AMZ, my CD. And then we're waiting for the death to occur, and then drain essence stops, and then we immediately jump. And again, we are done jumping before the next drain essence and the next set of mechanics come out. So watch this happen. Boss dies, everybody is stacked. Immediately we start jumping, as you see. We drop CDs, we drop Link. One player is a little slow, but it's done. The dude is still casting random Dreadbolt volley, and by the time the jumps are over, as you see, everybody is full health. So you see, drain essence is occurring. Everybody's full health. One person's at like 90%. Everybody else is full, and that was actually Vic's Divine Hymn there. So that's interesting. But okay, so now we're on Stavros. So now Stavros is the target again. Frieda Last. So we are now in phase 2, what I'd consider phase 2, and things begin to be more complicated mechanically, but not by much, okay? So at this point, Stavros' mechanic, the tank mechanic, changes, and I don't know why. I guess this is just how they decided to make the fight difficult. He now does it constantly, like very frequently, like every 8 seconds or something, like maybe less than that. I think it's actually, yeah, it's like maybe like every 4 seconds. Does it constantly, okay? So you're going to want to swap what we were doing every 3 stacks. A lot of times I'd miss because I'd constantly be like moving and calling out mechanics. I'd miss it. 4 stacks is fine. I saw Jix take like upwards of like 7 or 8 stacks at times. He was still fine. I probably could have did the same if I was ready for it, but yeah, we just swapped every 3 ideally, and that was perfect. So here we go. Fight begins properly now. Okay, so there's first tank mechanic. Always make sure it's not targeting your group, not going to run through your group. This was a big problem for us, and it was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to change the strategy, was because when we were constantly having to swap Stavros and Nicholas in phase 2 of the other strategy, it was like, oh my God, we are doing such a bad job, me mostly doing such a bad job controlling where these are going. Like, I could not tank Stavros and run around in circles and grip ads. Like, I never figured out how to do that. Maybe I could have if I paid more attention, but to this day, I still don't know how you're not supposed to hit players with that mechanic. So here we go. So it's one tank mechanic. I'm always saying huge dark recital here, guys. Huge one. And it's a little bit mental because now we're facing the other direction. And I don't know, like you realize that we've moved from one side to the other, but we flipped the direction we're facing too. So everybody has to be sold out for that. You have to be facing the opposite direction because the weak aura only ever points left. So for some reason you're on the other side of the boss, facing the original side that we were facing, you're gonna run the wrong direction and gonna kill people. So it's a big dark recital. The way I'm handling, and again, evasive lunge going to happen constantly during dark recital. And this was actually one of the things that killed us the most when we first switched this mechanic. So what you need to do is you need to get outside the loop. What I mean by that is the people are going to run around and say like a 40-degree arc. You need to be 45 degrees. Okay. You need to be on the opposite angle. So it shoots out and like, so people are coming this way and it's shooting that way. Hopefully that's obvious. You'll see it obviously here. I make a huge error here. I blink too far into the thing and it knocks me back. Okay. And that causes him to jump this way when I'm trying to have him jump this way. Doesn't hit anybody, luckily. But encourage your DPS not to follow here, especially the people with Dark Recital. They simply cannot follow the boss. There's going to be a lot of times when this happens, and you just simply need to get off the boss. That's just how it's going to be. And again, even with that, so freaking easy. The DPS requirement is never in play here. So anyway, we have an attendant. And again, I apologize for the quality, but this is right from the stream. So we have an attendant spawning here. This is actually a really unfortunate spawn. He could be very far away from Stavros, and again, this could be huge damage. But as a tank, I am trying to make sure he does not get Stavros immediately, because it's just DPS lost. But so here, I think actually Rick, oh, Rick, what are you doing? He's all the way out by himself here, and he gets charged right through. But that's pretty normal. I'm having him charge the opposite direction, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move him away from the ad. So make him charge the opposite direction of the ad. So your DPS have more uptime on the ad and less downtime. Like the immunity on the boss is lower. Okay. It's going to probably happen regardless though, because then he kind of stands around. You can't really move him again. So anyway, this ad is actually, that was excellent. He barely made the boss immune at all. Maybe the best ad we do all night around that fight, on that portion of the fight at least. So now we're swapping. So that's 3 stacks on tank. We're swapping. I'm taking Freida, and at this point, you have to be careful of interrupts. Obviously, you need to interrupt Freida regardless of what strategy you use. That's not something I'll discuss here, but please make sure you have good. We actually used 9 players because we had so many missed interrupts early. I needed to designate 2 backups. Okay, we still had misses, but at this point, this is probably the most important interrupt in the dungeon or in the whole fight. Be- anyway, because yeah, you have everybody's moving away from the boss. Okay, so here's the first like mechanic that you would never see if you never did this strategy before. Waltz of blood. Okay, a mechanic is going to pull these dudes down from the ceiling. They're going to dance. If you stand under where they're dancing, you get stunned, take a bunch of damage. You're probably going to die. I don't know exactly how much it does. I don't know. I've probably been hit by it, but I don't remember. Other mechanic, Frieda is now empowered. This prideful eruption. Okay, it's just a relatively small circle, probably like 10-yard radius. Just spread. That's it. It does probably like 25% of your health. It's really not that dangerous. As blood decay, especially AMZ or AMS every time. It's like literally nothing. Like this is a joke. I actually just stopped using AMS instead because I was getting more value out of the runic power for offense. I just started using blood tap. I don't even like it's completely pointless damage wise. So DK DPS, same deal probably. But anyway, yeah, just spread a good, a perfectly optimized raid group is going to have a spot for every single player. If you did like Croesus, I can't remember the name of the fight, but a fight in Hellfire Citadel, famous Exorcist raid tool. came out at that time and they had a map with a spot for every single player, that would be the ideal way you handle this mechanic. Every single player goes to the exact same spot every time, and I would heavily recommend people do that. You don't have to actually designate it, but as you see, this is always the same. Like, I'm always going to be flanked by these people. This is always going to be the people over here. And the big thing is separating your healers. You don't want to have, we actually had this for a while. When we were 4 healing, all 4 healers were on the right side. It's like, oh, that's a big problem. So anyway, yeah, we got it better separated now, and people are more cognizant. Now, anybody who's low here, it's probably just because they were kind of low coming into it, or maybe they chose not to do anything about that. But yeah, some people could die there. If anybody overlaps, they will die. So no overlaps can occur, of course. But the big fatal death that I've seen here is they come back to the charge, as you see, and you get hit by that when you're already 50% health from the other mechanic. That's a death for sure. So again, the boss is being swapped there, so the other tank picks him up and just makes a beeline. Doesn't hurt that Jix is Demon Hunter. He's able to get there very fast, but if you are a tank that is not very fast and you're in this role, you want to take some movement ready. You want to have some movement ready, because if you don't get that boss there, like, and the thing is, the boss could stay all the way back there. It's like the Nathrius. When the mechanic occurs, wherever you are, it goes through you. That's it. So if you're 500 yards away from the boss, he's going to port 500 yards and do the mechanic. All you have to do is be there. So just taunt it and make a beeline. That's it. Maybe establish threat or something. I don't know. Probably have to do that. And then make a beeline, get there as fast as possible. And you want to be on the north side of the stack, meaning like the other side of the stack. And we said this a lot during progression. People are spreading out for the prideful eruption or whatever. You do not want to spread out on this side of the room. Do you guys understand this? Nobody should be over here, because then they could accidentally be cleaved when they're running back to the stack. You don't want to cross that. There's like a plane, right? Just like with Dark Recital we described, there's a circle and then there's a plane for Dark Recital. You don't ever want to cross that plane. At any point during this encounter with Stavros alive, do you want to cross that plane of his charge? Because it does a lot of freaking damage, and if you accidentally get hit by it a second time, it's going to kill you for sure, because it puts a stack on you as well. It's not just the tank. So anyway, we're stacked back up. Drain Essence first, and now it's going to be jumps shortly after, okay? So at this point, again, we have more CDs. We have the jumps coming out. We have a nice window where there's nothing happening. We're putting the CDs down again. Link and AMZ, that's the other DK's AMZ, and we're just jumping, getting it out of the way. Now, again, pretty aggressive. A lot of people are very low, but we're in no real danger. We have a big amount of CDs. We actually use another Divine Hymn there as well, so everybody's pretty safe, even though it looks a little sketchy. At this point, we should taunt. Yeah, so I swapped here. So I would definitely say, if you're worried about tanking these 2 bosses, try to swap. Like the way we do it every 3, we swap after the key mechanics. You don't want to have the boss being swapped during the key mechanics. And that would be the mistake I made when I accidentally let Jix take 4 stacks, or just flubbed the taunt or something. Then we have to swap during the mechanic, and that is this whole Dark Recital, keep the boss in this plane outside Dark Recital. You don't want him crossing the Dark Recital, because that's just going to confuse people, and obviously they can get hit by the mechanic then. So anyway, we have another evasive lunge. It's going to be 2, and then the third stack is again Drain Essence. So you want your jumps to be done by that Drain Essence right there. It would be Drain Essence, jump, Drain Essence. Again, all of those CDs used, so we don't have to deal with the mechanic during the next set of mechanics coming up. And that is going to be Dark Recital and Add. So an Add is out. As you see, some players are very proactive. Add is spawned all the way out here. Here's the third evasive lunge. And now we are going to swap well in time for the Dark Recital. So again, another Add spawning. And again, I'm saying things like, don't get turned around. If you get turned around and you're not ready for Dark Recital, you're going to run the wrong direction. You're going to kill people, okay? So that's that. Make sure people are on that Add. We have melee on that Add as well. A really good idea, something to keep in mind. If you have monks and demon hunters, get them on that Add, because they're going to buff the damage your ranged are going to do, okay? I don't know how well we did this, but yeah, the Add comes in without the physical and magic damage buff, right? So that just means it's taking less damage, especially considering most of your damage is going to be casters or hunters. Those 2 things are going to be mostly, physical and magic, obviously. So obviously. Okay, so anyway, so here we go. We're stacked up. Add is not dead yet, but it doesn't matter, because we're actually at a time when there is a DPS requirement, but we're crushing it. And we're to the opposite side. We're actually too fast at times. And I don't necessarily know like what to say about that. If you're not too fast, all I would say is just weather the storm. Your DPS is going to get better over time. But I will tell you, there is definitely a requirement here, and you have to make it. If you do not, it's going to get really complicated. So somebody dies. I think Rusty actually lags out or something. But anyway, yeah. So somebody's going to die there, no problem. That's if you watch your progression, very very common. So here we go. The next mechanic is Waltz of Blood. Okay, Eruption's also on its way, but we are not going to see it because we have it like juiced or whatever you would say. Okay, so it would occur as the bosses are leaving, so it just gets pushed back. Okay, so this is extremely important. Waltz of Blood has to occur and then end. You do not want both. Okay, so Waltz of Blood, the ideal scenario would be just like we had with the ad in phase 1. The cast starts and you push. Okay, that's the ideal circumstance. I don't know if that's like, I'm not 100% sure on that, but we know the mechanic has to happen. And I have seen it where as long as the cast happens at all, the mechanic will happen and then it's gone. We won't see it again for a very long time. So it's extremely important. So I was saying, coming out of that dark recital, if the boss is not 55% or lower, you're in trouble. You're not going to make this. Okay. If it's at least 55 or lower, like 54, 53, you're in very good shape. But if it's like 53 or lower, you need to stop. Again, you will not, you need to get this mechanic. You do not want Waltz of Blood at the start of the next phase for a few reasons. It's actually not as big of a deal as I'm making it. We did have a few good pulls where it did happen, but it's very suboptimal because you want to deal with the mechanics in rapid succession, and that really messes everything up. So yeah, as you see, Waltz of Blood doesn't even occur. We don't see it on the screen. He casts the ability, and that's it. It's over. Okay. And from what I can tell, Waltz of Blood always favors where you are, so you could actually bait it. But we've just removed it. We only have one on each phase because we've effectively removed it from just killing it fast. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. This is a joke. This strategy is so freaking easy up until this point. Like, I mean, you really, the only way to mess it up is by messing up mechanics that would exist no matter what strategy you do. So this is the thing. We're doing that. We're messing it up constantly because that's the dark recital. That's the other mechanics not killing ads fast enough, not making DPS checks. It doesn't even matter. Like, this has nothing to do with the strategy up until this point. And look at this chat. People are like, literally, they're doing nothing but bash. You know, it's like, wow, it's so freaking embarrassing. So like, if you want to do this, you have to be mentally fortified because you're going to have this nonsense. I don't know what it is about WoW players where they think like, well, this isn't how Method did it, so there's no reason to even consider another option. I don't know. Anyway, so we're back to the fight. So first tank mechanic, that's actually a bigger deal than it looks like. Let's be 100% on the same page about this. We come out and we want to be stacked, and this is why you don't want Dark Recital, and this is why you want the Prideful Eruption to be juiced out as well, because now no mechanic is stopping you from stacking. So if you do this right, exactly as we've done it, you've made this portion of the fight extremely easy. This is actually the easiest, in my opinion, the easiest part of the fight other than the first 50% push. A complete joke this time in the fight. Before, we were trying to use CDs to skip the mechanics that come up at the end. That's how freaking easy it was. We were trying to take the only actual mechanics out of it. But then we weren't making the Bloodlust, so don't do this. At this point, you save all CDs. Now we're approaching like another mechanical set. We want it to happen, so we can go into the Bloodlust with the most uptime possible. Okay, and you're gonna Bloodlust as soon as you fight Freida alone. So anyway, that first tank mechanic is imperative because if the tank who has threat is not aware that he's going to lunge while he's out there, you might be facing the wrong direction and it might go through the group. Okay. So whoever gets that needs to see how he's over here. He's ready for the plane. And look at these people aren't. See, this Morgan, he's normally very good. He's walking towards the boss. Like, no, you don't do that. So now he gets almost, I don't know if he actually gets hit. It's under the webcam. But he almost gets hit, and it doesn't matter though. I mean, it's whatever, not ideal, obviously, but it's fine. Okay, so anyway, now because we can stack, we're dealing with this mechanic the exact same way. I'm going to drop my AMZ. I think we have maybe barriers up. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. This is, again, super freaking easy. There's no mechanics happening at this point. We're going to jump and clear all these stacks, get this out of the way as fast as possible. And yeah, just make sure nobody dies here. No problem. So we've now effectively like because of the way we've aligned these mechanics, taken all complication out of this phase. So now we're just relaxing. I'm telling the raid, just relax. We have relaxing mechanics coming up, just one mechanic at a time, nothing overlapping, very, very straightforward. Okay. So the charges keep making sure you're taunting, whatever. And that's it. Next is a add, obviously drain essence, 3 people. It's very easy. Like I was saying, just spot heal. You see this, we're doing such a better job with that. Before, people were just not getting spot heals and they're just going low. No problem at all. So here we go. Add has spawned. Okay. This add is all the way in the back. Again, really, it's like a benefit that we've afforded ourselves. This is actually the only difficulty of this part is killing adds properly. Okay, because you want to make these splits comfortably. And in order to do that, like it's not a DPS race because what's coming up is the DPS race. But doing this well makes the DPS race that's coming up cleaner. And that's a DPS gain. Always. Always clean. Okay. So anyway, we're bosses there. I do not think we talked about this. I do not think you want to move Stavros in the way that I was moving Nicholas when we were doing this before. In this video, when I was explaining, you can move him so the ad doesn't make him immune as fast as possible. I would not recommend this because if he charges, it just confuses people. I think it's a bad philosophical approach to the mechanic. You want this guy to be very planar and never vary and never accidentally hit somebody. So for me, I don't think it's worth it. But anyway, you could do it if you wanted to. Okay, so here comes the ad. Ad is maybe even dead by now. I guess, yeah, the ad was just dead. Maybe I missed it. Anyway, so ad's dead, whatever. Next up is Dark Recital. And this is what I'm saying. It's so relaxing Dark Recital. Just take a deep breath. You're on a beach, no problem. Very, very, very easy. Because even though this mechanic should be easy at this point, it's still, we got the yips. People got the yips on this mechanic, okay? They do stupid stuff with it, and I just need them to relax because this is a seminal moment in this fight. If you lose a battle res right now, you're in serious trouble. Hopefully, but at this point, you have no deaths. If you lose a battle res now, it's going to be very demoralizing for more than one reason. Okay. Anyway, so you see, they're walking. Chick's got the plane on the outside of the sphere that they're the radius of the circle they're walking. Okay, and we all the time just interrupting. As a tank, I try to get the interrupt during Dark Recital because I feel like it's the only time anybody's actually going to miss one. And here now at 10%, when that boss, the Dark Recital is ended, the boss needs to be at 10%. And if he's lower than that, that's good, but not good because you need to stop. Like it's not bad, but you need to be aware of this. This is a very, very important part of the encounter. Okay. So here we go. Waltz of Blood. So this is the only time we're going to see it, obviously, in this portion of the encounter. We have to move. All right. Now there's a couple options based on where we're stacking. Maybe you'll do it differently. I don't know. But it's either going to come in like this segment of the room, and then this segment is open, and we just move up a bit, or it's going to come in this segment of the room, and we don't want to move backwards. Instead, we're going to move sideways, and that's not great. So I will tell you, bad RNG there, I guess, bad strategy building, really. But the sideways move was quite deadly. A lot of times people just weren't comfortable with it. So if you get what happens here, where they spawn behind you, you basically don't have to move at all, but we do anyway just to be safe because these guys can get slightly, you can get slightly pushed to the wrong direction there. So now at this point, stop stacking, spread out because there's only one thing you need to do well, and that is kill this ad. When this ad comes in, you should annihilate this thing. Don't use CDs, of course, on it, but it should be dead. On our best pulls, it was dead. Like, it wasn't even close. It was so dead so early. And this is so important because if this phase gets elongated at all, like the boss could be sitting there at 1% HP, but you have to kill that ad first. Because if you don't, and this is why we were bemoaning what we were doing before, we were trying to push through this. Because if that ad spawns, it's going to make Freida immune during the Bloodlust. That's very bad. So what ideally happens is the ad spawns, dies, you transition. But there's a catch because we also have the jumps. So we want enough time to get the jumps off before the Bloodlust because obviously you don't want 5 of your DPS not DPSing and jumping, right? So the ad dies. There's also the spread, okay, the prideful eruption. That's just going to happen regardless. No way to avoid that. And we could have pushed, like I said, we could have pushed ahead of this, but you'd have to have insane insane damage to make this happen, and it's not worth it because then you're losing damage for the next phase. So anyway, here comes spread. So this is why we're not stacked, right? There's no reason. You pre-spread. As soon as you get past that 10% mark, that dark recital ends, the very casual dark recital, everybody's just spread out. Just spread out, go to where you're gonna go so you don't lose any uptime when it occurs. And it's just a nice little spread here, very comfortable. And a mechanic is coming. So we're on the attendant here, and this thing should be dead. It's a little slow, this pull. Okay, but no, actually, that's really good. That's actually really good. So anyway, keep stacks in mind. Jix has 5 stacks, kind of AFK here, just thinking about the boss. But yeah, ideally you don't want the tank to die either. Now we have about 50% left on this jump mechanic. So here we go. The boss has not transitioned yet. We're 3%. We want to be done with this before the boss dies. Okay. So we're going to jump, drop link, CDs, blah, 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 AMZ. Now, one thing I will say, if you're a class that has ramp, it is at this point, so when that ends, when the ad is dead and you're no longer spread out in your stack now, you start ramping on Freida, okay? I've seen a lot of guilds do this, where Warlocks and Shadow Priests, they start dotting Freida before Stavros is even dead. And that sounds dumb, and it could be dumb, I guess, depending on how many of these classes you have. Because if we fail to kill Stavros, like right now, we're actually screwed. Okay, if that eruption gets on the other, or whatever the next mechanic would be, gets on the other side, it's actually going to be a huge problem. But it's all about burst DPS right here. Okay, so here we go. We finished all of it. Everybody's going to be pretty much at full health by the time we lust. So this is all offense. If you have not saved your offense for here, that's bad. Okay. So it's so freaking easy. The rest of the splits, as long as you have good, people are ready. The rest of the splits are not hard. And I'll tell you, we do not have a crazy DPS team. We do have some people really stepped up recently, but we don't really, for the most part, it's like green parsers at best, right? So that's not a problem. That's rating, but we don't do anything special here. That's what I'm trying to convey to you, that this is very, very, very easy up until right now. And now it gets really, really, really difficult. Okay. So we're bloodlusting. The goal is to see well under 80 before the mechanic starts. If you're not seeing that, people are not using their CDs here. Okay. That's just a hard fact. You should see 70, if anything. Okay. So let's take a look at that. So the first mechanic is Drain Essence. And I'm going to say, just don't even worry about this. Make sure your uptime is high at this point. With Bloodlust and pot going, Drain Essence is the least of your concerns. Just don't bathe in the freaking puddle after it happens, okay? So we have people moving a lot with this mechanic. You see Rogue, it's OMC it probably, moving way out. And it's like, great, that's probably how you should do the mechanic. But nah, you're just cloaking and staying in, or whatever. You're just feigning. I don't know. Just stay in and keep DPSing there, because it's so much more. This is not a mechanic to make you move. Okay, and we had some discussions about this. Like, these puddles are not actually something you should move from. Like, if you're trying to get good uptime during Bloodlust, then don't move. Right? Like, we're moving out of mechanics. We're moving out of CDs that are lowering our DPS. Okay, well, anyway, it begins now. Okay, this is the real. So you see, before the mechanic, the boss at 68. Okay, so yeah, it should be under 70, really. 80 is not. Realistically, it's probably under 70 that you should be targeting. Here we go. This is where things get interesting, and you're going to have a lot of trouble here, but the problem is that it takes a while to get here, and you'll be frustrated and maybe, a little bit tilted by the time you do, and it makes the pulls harder to get progression on. But realistically, we only had like 20 pulls in this phase with 5 healers, and that was it. So if this is the hardest part of the fight, it only really took us 20 pulls to get it. Okay, so let's take a look. So we have to spread out here. Now, there's also an ad has spawned. And again, because of what we did earlier in the fight, the ad is basically back in battle for Azeroth. Let's put it that way. He's that far away, okay? So what I'm saying is, go to the ad. Don't attack Freida. We got to her freaking 68%. We're good. We're all set. Go kill the ad to make sure we can keep killing Freida. So if you're a selfless player, instead of staying here and cheesing, stabbing them, you know what I mean? Like a little stabbing them in the back here. No, you're just going to run all the way to the fucking ad, because then you're already spread out, right? You don't have to worry about this mechanic. You're going to be spread out naturally just from doing that. So you see all these melee who are like, oh, but I popped CDs 30 seconds ago. I need to keep an auto attack. It's like, great. Now all these people are getting hit. You see all these people? These people are getting hit. Okay. So instead, they should be running. All right. And they're also dropping these puddles. Whatever. So it doesn't matter. So ad is there. Now this ad should definitely be better. This is a really good one, actually. Yeah. Okay. Now that was perfect. Basically doesn't immune the boss. And now we see bosses into the 60 mark. So this is going really well. But here's mechanics again. Really, really important. So that was like the precursor to the difficulty. Okay. Here's where things go really bad. Now, I'm going to give full credit here, okay? I did not actually know this mechanic existed until somebody told me about it, because when you look at other guilds and other videos, nobody ever really talks about the tank perspective. But there's a mechanic called soul spikes that every time you get hit by soul spikes, it splashes the damage around like your whole raid, okay? As the tank. Every hit of soul spikes makes you take more damage from soul spikes. So I don't think there's any way to not get 4 stacks because it just channels 4 stacks on the player. We talked about potentially taunting at like the last second and maybe she would switch it or something like that. It didn't seem to work. It's going to go on one player 4 times every time soul spikes comes out, and it's going to splash that damage out to others. Okay. So yeah, the times when I was just letting Jix tank the whole time and I was just basically trying to raid lead, very bad. Okay. He had 8 stacks. And yeah, suboptimal. Let's put it that way. Very big mistake on my part. It doesn't do as much damage as you'd think it would, but that's a lot of extra damage that shouldn't really be occurring. And I don't know for sure if you use, like if I used Icebound Fortitude, would that reduce the damage the raid takes? I don't actually know that. But the damage Frieda does to you is physical. Damage done to the raid is shadow. Keep that in mind. So, but of course, most people don't care about this. Most people instead care about what Soul Spikes does when Freed is empowered, and that's drop 4 puddles. So it's 4 hits, 1, 2, 3, 4. Movement, 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 movement. Okay. Ideally. Now, again, we're having uptime concerns. So we want to move as little as possible. And again, there was a lot of comments about that. But at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say a big move is in your future. So we're kind of looking to move about 50% of the way through the room. So at that point, we're thinking blue, right? But here comes the real difficulty. So all of that's happening. It's doing a lot of freaking damage to everybody. Everybody's spread out. They're all panicking. They're like, oh my God. So on top of that, Dark Recital comes. Now, if you're really pro, if you're super pro, you're going to get those 4 puddles dropped perfectly, and you're going to be stacked down blue. That's how you're going to do the mechanic. The boss is going to swing to the other side of blue. You're going to do that nice little arc on Dark Recital. That's not us. We're not that. We're not pro like that. So we don't do that. Okay. We don't do that. Instead, we say if you get Dark Recital, you find a way to live if your life depends on it. You find any source of survival you can. And ideally, you run to your partner at this point because everybody's going to be spread out. But you don't run through puddles. You don't run through the melee, okay? If you got melee with Dark Recital and you're doing what I'm suggesting, you scream at the top of your lungs at them to get away from the boss. We had so many deaths to other people's Dark Recital because the melee are like trying to do the mechanic, like if we're actually moving around the boss, and the people who are like not expecting that to happen are just standing there getting hit by it because it's the exact same color as the shit on the ground. Like you can almost not tell the difference. So anyway, Dark Recital comes out. Now, these jumps have gone up too. We're not jumping. Okay, this is a last minute alteration we made to the strategy, and I think it was the right play for sure. And I'm going to tell you why. We're not jumping here. Instead, everybody is surviving. Look at these people. We're getting a sack. We got a rat pallet throwing a sack on a warlock. Come on, that team play. I'm telling you, this is what you need to do the strategy because this is a mess. Okay, and I think you're going to see when people look at this, they're like, this is ridiculous. There's no way you want to do this. That's really not hard. It's actually very easy. Like once you get 20 players calm and knowing what they're looking at, there's not really any danger here. This red stuff on the ground, don't stand in that, okay? Make sure tanks know what soul spikes is, unlike me. That's probably more damage than I gave credit for. And this Dark Recital, just be ready. Like use immunities if you have to. Just find a way to live. Health stone, health pot, defensive. You are safe. Okay, very easy. That's it. Because then we're not jumping. There's another point of problem for us. I didn't realize that people were doing this. So I was like, I don't know when we're jumping. Just start jumping. I'd call people out. I'd be like, Jix, jump. And then somebody was like, jump? I like jump. And then they just start jumping. And then like 3 people are jumping. And it was just people are getting slaughtered. It's not good. So we're not jumping here. So people look at this. Every single person survives. I wish I could show you the chart better, but every single person survives this, including Cop, who barely survives. I mean, it was such a freaking big play. It's unbelievable. So now you've passed the test. If everybody's alive here, you're gonna kill this boss. But it's not over. You have to make this DPS check. So if you've not successfully gotten this boss to well under 55, you have a problem. The problem is that the eruption and the ad will spawn at the exact same time. So ideally, neither of those things happen. Okay. But this is another situation where you do need the ad to spawn. Okay. So you want that to spawn and you want to push as the eruption begins, because the eruption will take about 5 seconds to coalesce and it will then explode. If you push during its coalesce period, it does nothing. It goes away. See you later. So it happens and does no damage. So that is the ideal push yet again. If you do not make this, you're going to be at a huge deficit coming into this, especially if you still have jumps. Okay. Very, very important. That is the hardest DPS portion of the encounter. Bloodlust and pots and good CD usage should never come into play. It should not even be close. You should make it. If you're still having trouble with it, don't move the boss as much. That was a big problem for us. We were moving the boss radically. People are unable to keep up. You could look at the logs. We had people who had like 50% uptime on this boss in this portion of the fight. We still did it. Okay. So how do we handle the leaving of this phase? Let's talk. So we have jumping a little too early here. What we want is to jump as the phase ends. You could jump as long as you get it done in time at any portion of the encounter. And guess where a pretty good portion of the encounter for jumping is? The time when there's no other mechanics. The freaking like intermission in a mythic raid fight where there's no actual mechanics. So ideally we're pushing out of this and we have a good 10 seconds to finish jumping. This is actually a little slow from what we had been seeing. But yeah, so you see prideful eruption just doesn't happen. So nice. And now we have about 10 seconds to finish jumping. There's no other mechanics. We're literally just sitting here waiting for the boss to come back. You know what I mean? You're just walking. We're doing like a game where people are trying to guess which one it's going to be. And if you get all 6, you're like a god, basically. So we're just waiting. So this is when you want to actually jump. Okay. So probably not all 5 people, but yeah, you definitely don't want to all jump right now, but you could even just stack up right now and jump. Like we actually had that suggested. People were like, okay, quickly stack, jump, and then go do the dance. And it's like, that doesn't seem right. But you could do that. One other tip I will give you, the boss runs to the front. And while she's running, she's not immune. So any damage you do to her while she's running is damage you have now gained for the next portion. We've had her as low as 47. Or various bosses as low as 47 while they're running. And this is another reason why we want to go to blue. In fact, we probably should have went further than blue. At this point, when I know it's over, we should be moving the boss even further because that's just pure DPS gain. We didn't do that. Just something to keep in mind. So here we see a few more jumps. And at this point, it's like literally every single person was at 5% health, you're fine. There's nothing else to do for like 20 seconds or something, maybe more. So Ellie Shaman, start splash healing yourself. You know what I mean? Cast splash heal on yourself, you're good. You heal yourself. You don't even need healers to heal you. There's no problem at all here. This is when you want to handle that mechanic. And I wish I knew that earlier. Couple things I wish I knew earlier in this fight, and we would have killed this a long time ago. But so you see 49.4%. Now here it's a really big moment in the fight. Okay. Obviously it's the time you would kill the boss, but it's more than that. We want to get ahead of the mechanics. Okay. So even though things are going to get really hectic, there's a couple mechanics that we want to get out of the way here. So let's talk about this. So what I'm saying is we want to stack right now. Now, if we didn't skip the prideful eruption, like if we pushed it so fast that the mechanic never occurred, it'd be occurring now. So that could be bad, okay? But you just need to identify that. It's not actually that bad. You just need to identify it, okay? But ideally, you push right there and you have prideful eruption cast but not do damage. That's ideal. So now we're stacked, and there's a very specific reason why. We're going to have the dance, and that dance comes out at a very awkward time. Or, I mean, the jump, of course. So there's the ad out, by the way. Make sure you're on the ad. This is not good. This ad should not. I mean, we had so much time to kill this ad. For it to be at 30% while it's at the boss is really bad. People are just panicking. There's a lot of panic on this fight. So we have jumps, okay? So guess what? We have about 3 or 4 seconds. Yeah, we actually have 3 seconds before Soul Spikes begins. Stack up and use those freaking 3 seconds you have. You want to maximize every second in this part. Stack up, throw Link down. Link should have been down already. We should have been jumping already. We could have got extra stuff out. There's Link. Now you could also just do Soul Spikes in the Link. As long as people are moving out of the puddles, you can just run around kind of in the Link. And I think we kind of accidentally do that here because this Link is pretty late. Yeah. So you see we're actually eating the Soul Spikes in the Link. Pretty good idea, huh? Not bad at all. But yeah, not ideal. So now it turns into a complete mess. So now here we have 5 people with about 30% of their dancing still, or their jumping still. During the dance, 3 of them have it. We've lost a lot of people here. And, you know, if you're a very skilled raid leader, not as prone to panic as I am at times, you'll be able to call that out and make sure they're aware of it. But we've lost a lot of people to this, simply not realizing that they still need to jump after this mechanic. But again, everybody's all spread out. Make sure melee are not complicating the boss. Like, you know, relatively complicated, but we can attack. You can see, like, people are here attacking, so no big deal. And this doesn't actually do anything. Like, this is the red stuff from that mechanic. It's not leaving puddles. And I think that's what confused people when we were arguing about moving, was it's like, there's no puddles there. As long as we're attacking the boss right now, there's no additional puddles coming for a while. Like, it's not going to happen again until the next eruption, right? And Drain Essence maybe a little bit, but it would have to close off an area, and that's pretty unlikely. So we're good. We don't have to move this boss again for the whole time, and I'm moving it just because this has been habit. So I want to actually see. So our warrior dies. I don't actually know to what. Oh yeah, so he's see, so unlucky. So he gets. He also has the jump too, which is probably causing him to panic. So he gets. Maybe he doesn't get this. Well, anyway, he's pretty low coming at it. So I'm trying. This is our only actual death until things fall apart. But yeah, he gets Drain Essence. I presume he also has another mechanic, but maybe not. I can't actually see where he is. I can't tell. But anyway, yeah, so he's going to die here. But this is easily our best pull mechanically. He's the only death at this point, and we have the battle risk. So we have 20 players alive, and we have just gotten past there's basically 2 difficult times in this phase, and that's one of them. We've just gotten by it. And now we have the Divine Hymn coming. So again, spread. So now we're back to kind of a smaller lull in the mechanics. We have spread, and then it's another Soul Spike set, and just make sure you're taunting. And again, you know, you can move slightly if you feel like you need to, but ad has spawned. Just stay ahead of the ads. That's it. This is the time of the fight where the ads have to be perfect, and you have to have no deaths. You will not wipe to an enrage. You will wipe to ads. You will have multiple ads up, and you will not make any progress on the boss. This happened to us. We constantly get here, and we have 10 people alive, and the boss at 10%. It's like, it's over. We can't kill the ads fast enough. The ads are not allowing us to attack the boss, and you will have that. So anyway, so just that was perfect. That was actually really good. We had some really unlucky ad spawns too, where they spawn right next to the freaking boss, and it's so unlucky. I mean, I don't know. It's just really frustrating. But anyway, Soul Spikes. So now we're going to be, every time Soul Spikes happens in this phase, just make a big move. You'll actually notice that the puddles do go away if you're in this phase long enough. You obviously don't want to be in this phase that long. But here we go. So now at this point, this is when people are going to start dying, no matter what. I don't know. You would have to be like God tier coordination to not have deaths here. Again, you could try to stack up and run the little circle like, you know, good raiders will, but we don't do that. We're just assuming there's going to be deaths here, but it doesn't matter. The boss is at freaking 20%. It's over. It's actually over. In my head, I'm like, man, we finally killed this boss. Because I know once we get to 20, if you're at 20% right now and you have 20 players alive, the fight is over. You can't, it's like not possible to lose more than these 6 people right now. And even if that happened, you still have, I mean, that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? We lose 1. That's it. And we have another battle res. Yeah, this is a joke. This is over. This is actually over. But one more thing to keep in mind. You have these jumps, okay? Don't interact with them. Let those 5 people die. Unless both tanks get them. We had this problem. If both tanks get them, yeah, you're probably going to need to jump. But it's just not worth it. Like, you have 30 seconds for that mechanic. The boss is going to be dead. Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And like, there's no reason to jump here. It's either already a wipe or already a kill. So just kill the boss. Spread out for that mechanic. You're going to have another ad. That's it. Just make sure nobody dies to that. I mean, it gets a little dicey here, but we have 20 players alive right now. We have 20 players alive right now. This is insane. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. So that's it. That's soul spikes again. Probably going to kill some people. Good link. It's probably, don't know if it helped, but I'm sure it did. And that's it. So those 5 people are going to die, or 6. Yeah, 5 people are going to die. Who cares? Fight's over. 2%. And the only thing that's going to stop you from killing this fight is if you get this ad and it really screws you. So you could have a couple deaths late. And if you're not crushing the damage, they could spiral into a wipe. But realistically, if you're at this point and all 5 people here die, it's over. As long as that ad doesn't ruin your kill. So it's not coming for a while. And again, all 6 of these people would have to die to Dark Recital, and we do our best to make that happen. But it's over. Yeah, it's like actually it. So I'll tell you what, it's a really satisfying kill for us because of what's happened here. And I've just now spent an hour and a half talking about it. I hope this helps somebody. I don't know who it will help, but I think I now mastered this encounter. I don't think there's anything left to learn on this encounter. And I know it's a real pain to re-clear. There's nothing left to learn. Like, we've learned everything. It's just about executing. I no longer fear this fight. Like, we've spent so much time with it. It took us a very long time to kill this fight. I don't know what's left. You know what I mean? So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, you're going to have an uphill battle. You're going to have an uphill battle with like different people potentially interacting with you socially because of this. Hopefully that won't occur for you. And you're in a guild of people who aren't going to make it occur for you. But yeah, so TLDR, somehow you're still looking for that. Just if you're able to do the other strategy, you probably should. I don't know for sure. I've never done it, but I know they nerfed the big portion of it that was difficult already. I don't know anything about it. Not a thing. I can't help you with that. But it's probably easier just because the hardest part of the fight is not the end of the fight. And that alone is a reason to not do this, because if the end of a 10-minute fight is the hardest part, not ideal, right? But hope it's helped, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, I am very happy to help you with that.